The Raiders continue with their head coaching search, and that continue rolls into National Championship Day. That plus more on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for Monday, January 19th, 2026.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one sports podcast network. We're very proud of that. We're also very proud of the fact that this show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of your support, Raider Nation, and the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes on the YouTube page, making sure we look good and sound good each and every day. Does great work, so we definitely appreciate him. You can find him on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, as many of you do, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line for you, 707-654-4693. As we normally do, we hear from you when we close out the show. Calls, texts, a lot of great feedback. We'll do that in segment number 3. Segment number 2, we'll talk about the national championship game. Indiana versus Miami, number 1 versus number 10. Everything on the line. Fernando Mendoza, another opportunity to see the guy who potentially, most likely, will be the Raiders starting quarterback in 2026. So we'll talk about him. You'll hear about him coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, it's all about the head coaching search. So news and notes, all head coaching. We'll jump into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. So just a couple updates real quick. The Raiders have been fast and furious with requesting interviews and also conducting interviews, and that's going to continue today. Tom Pelissero from the NFL Network actually tweeted this out on Saturday. Former Dolphins coach Mike McDaniel scheduled an interview with the Raiders on Monday in Miami for their head coaching job, per sources. A fascinating candidate for Las Vegas, which owns the number 1 overall pick and potentially the right to draft Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza. So that's from Tom Pelissero. That was the first time that we had heard anything about Mike McDaniel being in the mix with the Raiders. And what kind of threw me off is I'm assuming, and it's just an assumption, that he's going to end up being an offensive coordinator this year. He's taken a lot of interviews just to be an offensive coordinator after getting fired in Miami as the head coach. I think that Mike McDaniel is a really good OC. I think he's a very sharp offensive mind, and it's very intriguing to see if he would potentially be in line to take this Raiders job. Now, again, they're not leaving any stone unturned, so they're casting a very wide net. So I don't take too much to any of these interview requests, but it is intriguing to me that they're going to meet with him in person in Miami. Tom Brady, John Spytek, and company are all going to be there. Obviously, they'll be watching the game tonight, Fernando Mendoza in Indiana versus Miami. So that's an intriguing one right there, only because a lot of these jobs that he's been, interviewing with for OC, he's going to eventually be a head coach, right? He's going to be there, like in Detroit, for example. He'll be there a year, maybe 2, and then he'll end up being a head coach again, just because, again, these sharp offensive minds, they always get poached away to be head coaches. But if he were to take the job with the Raiders as the head coach, he would be the guy. He would be the play caller. I'm intrigued to see what kind of staff he could put together. Obviously, the team's got to be able to win in the cold, right? That's something that Miami was never able to do, win in the cold weather. And I know the Raiders don't face a lot of teams that are in cold weather, but you don't want to have that Achilles heel. You don't want to have that team that I like to call is too soft to go play in the cold, right? Look at the games that we saw over the weekend. Saw a lot of cold weather, right? So if you're going to go deep into the playoffs, there's a good chance that you can end up a place like Chicago, where it felt like, negative 10 degrees with the wind chill out there. I mean, there's scenarios that go in place, like New England. Look how the weather was ugly out there over the weekend as well. So I'm intrigued by McDaniel, and I really am interested to see what kind of staff he could put together. But that's not the only in-person interview that they're having today. Also, Panthers defensive coordinator Ejiro Evero is actually going to interview in person. This is from Jeremy Fowler from ESPN. He said he's going to interview in person for the Raiders head coaching job next week in South Florida. Evero met virtually with the club this week. He also has a Pittsburgh Steelers interview coming up. So if you're keeping track, in-person interviews with Mike McDaniel and Ejiro Evero will satisfy the Rooney Rule. That's from Ryan McFadden from ESPN. So I bring that up not to talk and wax poetically about the Rooney Rule, but to say that if the Raiders did, in fact, decide that they wanted to make a hire, they wanted to make an offer to a head coach, they could. They'd be compliant. All the boxes has been checked. So that, to me, is interesting that that's going to be the second interview, is a defensive-minded guy. I've been very much in the camp that they're probably going to go get a young offensive mind, and I just don't know if Evero is actually ready to be a head coach yet. But again, it's going to be the second interview that they've had with him. That'll be the first second interview that we've actually heard so far. And again, it's going to be an in-person interview as well. So something to pay attention to. On Sunday, The Raiders interviewed Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady. Bills got eliminated this weekend, losing to the Broncos in overtime. They turned the ball over 5 times, and it still got to overtime. Joe Brady is a guy that's been a hot name for a long time, ever since he was at LSU. Since he led Joe Burrow and those teams, he was the offensive coordinator there. And really wasn't officially even the offensive coordinator, but he had a lot to do with the offensive game plan there at LSU. Got a job at Carolina with Matt Rule when he took over the Panthers and didn't do too well. That whole team didn't do too well, so it kind of flamed out there. But, finally got his feet back under him now in Buffalo, and he's put together a really good offensive game plan there. Obviously, when you have a guy like Josh Allen, it's pretty easy to put together a really good offensive game plan. It goes through Josh Allen. But the Raiders did interview him on Sunday, as well as 49ers offensive coordinator Clay Kubiak. The 49ers got blasted by the Seahawks. Shanahan did say, this was something I saw from Vic Tafur from The Athletic, Shanahan said he would block a lateral move even if Kubiak gets a chance to call plays. So if you're looking at it and saying, well, maybe Kubiak's just interviewing as a potential offensive coordinator who calls plays, because we know Shanahan does all the play calling there in San Francisco, he said he would block that move. So if Kubiak's not going to be there, he's going to have to get a head coaching job. It's going to have to be what's the stupid word I'm looking for? It's an advancement or a better job, whatever that word is. It's an easy word, and somehow I can't come up with it, so that's cool. But he would have to promotion. There you go, ding, ding, ding. Man, there's like 8 people right now yelling at the radio or something like promotion, you big dummy. Yeah, it's a promotion. So I don't know if that's gonna come to fruition with the Raiders or not, but interesting that he did interview on Sunday. This was also interesting as well, and I try not to take too much from tweets, but this came out from AFL Godfather, and I kind of pay attention to what he tweets out. He said, you'll have to wait at least another week. So, and he tweeted this out during the Bears and Rams game. So I'm assuming, it's just an assumption, he's talking about the next head coach of the Raiders, and, he's probably hearing that it's someone that is still coaching, in the playoffs. And so I'm looking at maybe Seattle, maybe Denver. So I'm looking at Clint Kubiak or Davis Webb. Those are kind of the 2 names that I look at when I see a tweet like that. You'll have to wait at least another week. Again, this was going on during the Rams game. So we could say that it was any of the Rams coordinators that they've talked to as well, because they've talked to 3 of them. But since it was going on, since he tweeted that during the game, I'm assuming it's already a team that had punched their ticket to the championship round. So just to kind of round it all up as we close out segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, the coaches that have been interviewed so far by the Raiders, 9 on offense and 5 on defense once the interviews today get done. So Davis Webb, Broncos quarterback coach. Kevin Stefanski, Browns former head coach. He actually got hired by the Falcons, so he's no longer in the mix. Don't have to worry about him. Matt Nagy, Chiefs offensive coordinator. Vance Joseph, Broncos defensive coordinator. Clint Kubiak, Seahawks OC. Jesse Minter, Chargers DC. Ejiro Evero, Panthers DC. He's going to get that in-person interview today as well. Jeff Hafley, the Packers DC. Mike LaFleur, the Rams OC. Nathan Schillhouse, Rams passing game coordinator. Chris Shula, Rams defensive coordinator. Clay Kubiak, 49ers offensive coordinator. And Joe Brady, Bills OC. And then Mike McDaniel, former Dolphins head coach, will meet in person today. So again, if you're keeping track, that's 9 offensive head coaches potentially and 5 on the defensive side of things. So we'll continue to update you on the head coaching search, because that's the first domino that's got to drop for the Silver and Black. But tonight, the national championship game, Indiana, Miami, Fernando Mendoza, Carson Beck. We talk about that next, coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple great sponsors we have here on the show, and the first one is the Ultimate QB. The draft pick positions are set. So many teams are looking for their franchise quarterback, including the Raiders. Ever wish to become a pro QB and getting drafted first overall by the Silver and Black? Now you can. There's a mobile game just for you called Ultimate QB Football Legend. In this game, you step into the cleats of the number 1 draft pick, and it's your job to lead your team to greatness, to help turn a failing franchise into a dynasty. This is the number 1 quarterback career mode game on the mobile app stores, and it introduces the most realistic environment with full career control. You sign contracts, train, upgrade yourself, build chemistry, evolve your teammates, get it into the GM and roster moves, play the actual games in 2D, and rise through the ranks to become a pro football legend. Ultimate QB is totally free to play, has no ads, and works 100% offline, perfect when you want to sneak into a game or 2 on the go. All you got to do is head over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search for Ultimate QB in your app store. And got something special for all listeners of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Use the promo code Locked On, it's all in caps, in the game store to get a free boost at the start of your career. Ultimate QB, football legend. QB1, it's your legacy. I also want to tell you about PrizePicks. The big game is almost here, And there's no better way to stay locked into every moment than with PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where it always feels good to be right. With football season coming down to the final stretch, now's the perfect time to close it out strong. PrizePicks makes watching the game even more exciting by letting you build simple lineups around player projections. No drafts, no waiting, just football action all the way through the playoffs. PrizePicks is incredibly easy to get started. You pick 2 or more players and choose more or less on their projections, just that way. A great way to keep playing fantasy football even after season-long leagues are finished. And you'll love being able to mix stars from different teams and build lineups that fit how you watch the game. Right now, download the PrizePicks apps today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's all one word for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Time to talk about the national championship game. Before we do that, though, I do want to thank you so much for making the Locked On Raiders podcast your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. And if you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Clubs. That's right, Everydayer Club. You get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Raiders, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. It's lockedonraiders.supercast.com if you want to check it out today and maybe become a member. Now, let's go ahead and jump into this national championship. A little bit of a preview. The game is 7:30 Eastern time, 4:30 Pacific time. 10th ranked Miami hosted #1 Indiana. That's just how it played out. It's in their stadium. Matter of fact, Miami is going to be able to be in their locker room. So clearly they'll have a lot of love there in Miami tonight for this game. Carson Beck versus Fernando Mendoza. Remember, Carson Beck's a 2-time national champion winner while at Georgia. He has a chance to win a 3rd national championship. He's a guy that was projected to be the #1 overall pick at one point, and then it seemed like maybe the guy's not even going to go to the NFL. He's really kind of turned his career around now that he's in Miami, and he's rekindled his name, and he'll be a guy that's drafted. I don't know when he's going to get drafted, but he'll definitely get selected. He's definitely making a name for himself. And then you've got the guy that everyone, including myself, assumes going to be the #1 overall pick and the Raiders quarterback in 2026, Fernando Mendoza. And all he's done in the playoffs is dominated. On January 1 against Alabama, he was 14 for 16 for 192 yards and 3 touchdowns. He had 2 incompletions and 3 touchdowns. And then on January 9th against Oregon in the Peach Bowl, all he was 17 for 20, 177 yards and 5 touchdowns. 3 incompletions, 5 touchdowns. So if you're keeping track, yeah, he's got 8 total touchdowns and 5 incompletions on the playoff run so far. And look, Miami's a tough team. Miami is a team that is very physical. Miami is a team that has a lot of swagger. Miami has a big chip on their shoulder because a lot of people said they weren't even supposed to be in the playoffs, and here they are in the national championship game. They're trying to get that that swag of the U back. But, I mean, look, I think that Indiana's going to win this game. I think Fernando Mendoza is going to go, have another great game. But don't all of a sudden sway your feelings if the game doesn't go exactly how the first 2 games are gone. Like, he barely throws any incompletions. It just dominates. It's not going to be an easy game, but he's a really good quarterback. And I do believe that he's the right guy for the Raiders at #1. And I think they'll continue to show that, this afternoon or this evening. But I did want you to hear from someone else, not just me. Wale Ngule, he was a former Indiana Hoosier defensive end, played in the NFL for a long time. He's actually a guest on my radio show on ESPN Radio Game Night a couple times, matter of fact. It was funny. Like, one week he was on, then he was on the next week. So I had to ask him because a lot of people are talking about Curt Cignetti as well. Why don't he go to the NFL? How come nobody's talking about Curt Cignetti as being a potential head coach? So I started there, but then obviously we got into Fernando Mendoza conversation as well. So off top, we started off talking about Cignetti and how much of a difference is there trying to go from the college ranks to the NFL?
It's a lot different. I think at the end of the day, you're dealing with grown men who have kids and families and egos and way more money than the NIL that you're dealing with. Obviously, with NIL, there's starting to become some similarities to the game. You're going to see coaches probably being able to transition a little bit easier from college to pros with the way NIL has affected the game. But at this standpoint, you're dealing with the best of the best. You're dealing with individuals who make just as much or maybe even more money than you. Right now, Cignetti is going to be the highest paid person on the campus of Indiana. In the NFL, he will not be. Right? He'll be a handsomely paid coach, but he's going to have to deal with a bunch of men that are paid higher than him, and that's a tough thing to do, and dealing and putting all these egos aside, and then you've got to work with owners and general manager and all these different people that are, having their fingers on the pulse of the team. So it's not easy. If I'm a coach, especially in Cignetti's position, you're at Indiana, you're going to probably have a stature already resurrected with you on that campus. Cost of living is not going to be as expensive in Bloomington as many somewhere else. And, I don't see that as being an attractive thing unless it's something that he's always wanted to do and he's always wanted to coach in the NFL. Then, maybe, we're going to have this discussion every single year that Cignetti does well because he's a great coach. He's proven it. But, again, I think that transition to the NFL is not as easy as people will make it out to be. And history has shown that it's not an easy jump.
Speaking of transitioning to the NFL, everyone's expecting Fernando Mendoza to be the number one selection, the first quarterback taken off the board, the first player taken off the board in April's draft. How do you see his game translating to the National Football League?
That's interesting. I think his poise is going to do well. I think with any player, not only just quarterback, but any player in the NFL, they're all talented individuals. And it's really more what organization they go to, what coaching staff that he gets. And I think that's the biggest element. I would love to see teams drafting players that fit their style and their way of playing football. And sometimes teams just want to get the most talented guy, and sometimes that doesn't work. I think with Mendoza, you're going to get a solid guy that's going to do the right thing. He's going to be a positive leader. He's going to always say the right thing. And that's going to work well in a lot of locker rooms. And some locker rooms, it might not, right? Some locker rooms, you're going to want to have a little bit of edge. Some locker rooms are going to want you to be able to speak off the cuff and not be as scripted as sometimes it looks like Mendoza is. But again, I think looking at him, I would love to play with a quarterback like that. I would love to have a person of his pedigree and of his demeanor be my quarterback. And I think, most of the teams in the NFL would benefit from a quarterback like Mendoza. So I'm excited for his future. And, and I think he might have another year of eligibility. Maybe we can get him to stay one more, who knows?
Well, look, Wale, I'm here in Las Vegas, man. I'm going to let you know. I'm here in Las Vegas. The Raiders have the number one overall pick. Nobody wants to hear him talking about staying another year, but how do you think he goes, if in fact the Raiders were to select him number one overall? Tom Brady's in the building. What do you think about that pairing right there?
I think that's great. I mean, you have a guy like Tom Brady who, again, it's not about coaching the X's and O's, right? Sometimes you can be a great player but not able to translate and be able to articulate that greatness into other players. But I think just the knowledge and to be able to call and to speak to Tom and to just pick his brain about certain situations and how he should handle the media and coaches and how he should handle wins and losses and some of the things that he's seeing on the field. That's going to be, money can't buy that type of expertise and advice that Tom Brady will be able to hand off to Fernando. So, and if you think about the way Fernando is, he's a sponge. He listens really well. He's a very intelligent individual. I think you'll see, if it is someone like, the Raiders and has a guy like Tom in that building, that's a win-win.
So some good stuff right there from former Indiana Hoosier, longtime NFL defensive end Wale Ngulea, again, a guest on my radio show Game Night on ESPN Radio. But, kind of talks about Mendoza and what he brings to the locker room and, the kind of leadership that he has and what he's brought to the table. And you heard what he said. I think he's got another year of eligibility. Look, man, ain't nobody trying to hear he's going to go back to school another year. There's nothing he could do. That's what I've been trying to tell people that keep saying, well, what if he goes back? What if he does like Dante Moore and decides to go back to college? There's nothing he can do but hurt his stock. He's already the number one overall pick, right? There's nothing he can do at this stage of the game except for hurt himself, right? Now, I don't mean hurt himself physically. I just mean not have as good of a year as he had this year. Not to mention, the other thing about it is the draft class is supposed to be, and I say that in air quotes because that's what we heard this year, the draft class is supposed to be really deep with quarterbacks next year. So why would you want to go ahead and jump into, a pool of water that has a ton of quarterbacks in it? Instead, supply and demand. If the supply is not there but the demand's really high, it's going to make your stock go up. That's the reason why Ty Simpson is, in the draft class. That's the reason why, Trinidad Chambliss is probably going to get drafted a little higher than he should. And who knows, Carson Beck will probably get drafted higher than he should because, again, supply and demand, there's not a lot of demand, or there's not a lot of supply, but the demand is large for a quarterback. So just thought you should hear from, a guy that's been following the program, a guy that knows the program really well. And I'm really excited to see how Fernando Mendoza closes out his college season and closes out this college season. I can't answer for him and say that he's going to, just declare for the draft, but I just think it would be silly not to. He has till the end of the week to do that since he played in the national championship game. But I think there's no doubt he'll be going to the NFL, and you'll get an opportunity to see what he brings to the table one last time before they go through the draft process, and he's got to go to the combine and have his pro day, and you know how all that goes. But when it's all said and done, in game action, this will be the last chance you get to see him play before potentially next year as the Raiders starting quarterback. But what's on your mind? Your calls and texts will close out the show. 707-654-4693. We'll hear from you next. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. The wild card round, it's in the books. Divisional round, it's in the books. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets that you like the most. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. You know what? These days, leaning into defense is not a bad thing, right? Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. The boost gives you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. So, right now, visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Again, thanks so much for making this the first listen of the day. Raider Jay in SoCal, he's going to start things off. He's calling to talk about the head coaching position and who he believes the leader in the clubhouse is for the Raiders. Here he is, Raider Jay in SoCal.
What up, Q? It's Raider Jay out of SoCal by way of the 510. I was just calling, man, long season, but taking a look at these playoff matchups and sort of what's shaking out, I got to think that it's got to be Clint Kubiak as our head coach this year. And that basically just boils down to the way that he's been able to showcase such a dominant offense, obviously to pair with their dominant defense in Seattle. But if you look at the similarities of what he would be stepping into with the Raiders, obviously the Seahawks run game allows their pass game to really open up between Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. And what's really been killing me is everybody saying that we can't draft a quarterback because we don't have an established O-line and a run game and whatnot. Well, if we needed to establish a run game, it's a good thing we drafted a top 6 running back last year in the draft, or a top 6 player, I should say, in Ashton Genty, who's already showcased that he can pop. In terms of the O-line, again, I don't understand the people that say we have to trade the first pick to go compile draft picks to draft an O-line. That just doesn't make any sense. You look at the Chicago Bears, I'm pretty sure 3 of their starting 5 offensive linemen this year have been acquired either in a trade or in free agency, and we got the cap space. Tech, that's on you. And of course, like I said, you pair it with Ashton Genty. And then Sam Darnold, he's basically Fernando Mendoza in terms of the build and what he's capable of. Got it between the ears, can make all the throws. He's not super mobile, but he can move. So I see that lining up perfectly with what Clint Kubiak would be able to step into or transition from in Seattle. And I think that just would be the smartest move. The biggest question mark would be defense, but obviously what they're doing in Seattle right now, he can value what a great defense means to that team. So, I'm hoping it's Kubiak, man. I think if we can throw draft picks at maybe the wide receiver position to get Fernando Mendoza, somebody he's comfortable with, that'd be great. But really building out the defense with draft picks, that would be huge. And then whoever his DC hire would be most intriguing to me. So yeah, what do you think about Clint Kubiak, man? And I did want to say thank you because I ended up going to the Jacksonville Jaguars game way back in November. And I was trying to catch you at the Torch, but my boys actually got there before me. It was a rough Vegas night the night before, so I was running a little late to the game. Got there right around kickoff, and I think I just missed you. But you did send me a shout-out through a video that you recorded with my boys. So I wanted to say thank you for that. I appreciate that. I'll have to catch you at the Torch one time soon. But, yeah, appreciate all that you do, Q. Shout out to you and Ari, and go Raiders.
Jay, thanks so much for the call. And I got to feel like Kubiak is the leader in the clubhouse as well, right? It feels like it's either Webb or Kubiak, with Kubiak being the top dog. And I'll tell you right now, man, based off what we saw, the way that the Seahawks dismantled the 49ers, I mean, how could you not like that guy? How could you not want that guy, right? You want to talk about prisoner of the moment. That is a big-time dominating moment. Not to mention, he did really well with Sam Darnold, right? I mean, you saw what Sam Darnold did in Minnesota last year. He did really well to the end of the season. Well, Clint Kubiak, all he's done is be able to take Sam Darnold and make him a really good quarterback as well. Obviously, the defense there in Seattle is big time, but that running game, that's what excites me, is the fact that they really lean into the running game, and they make that such a big part of their game plan, because it needs to be a big part of the Raiders' game plan. So anyone who's willing to lean into the running game, especially if you get Fernando Mendoza, you don't want him to have to throw the ball 40 times a game, 35, 40 times a game. You want it to be more balanced. And so if you can open things up in the run game and then allow Fernando Mendoza to be that guy, be that threat, that's a win-win situation as far as I'm concerned. So it does feel like Kubiak's the leader in the clubhouse. Like I said, to me, it feels like it's either Kubiak or Davis Webb, just again based off of AFL Godfather's tweet about you have to wait another week to at least another week, and obviously those two teams are still playing in the playoffs. Davis Webb with the Broncos and Clint Kubiak with the Seahawks, and unfortunately for Davis Webb and the Broncos, they don't have their quarterback. Right, Bo Nix broke his ankle, and so he's not going to be able to play. So now it's going to be Jarrett Stidham. Old friend Jarrett Stidham is going to get the start next week in the AFC Championship game against New England. So most likely New England's probably going to win that game. Really looking at a Super Bowl, Seattle and New England, in my opinion. But that's, again, there's still time before that all comes to fruition. But thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Dan in the 801. He says, Q, I'm no GM or scout, but I do think we need a younger offensive-minded coach that has proven to put points on the board with confidence to build our offense into something. Then I think we draft the number one quarterback, which is Mendoza. And then I agree with you on spending the money on some good veteran offensive line. And honestly, whatever's left, we need to focus on a true veteran wide receiver, number one, and good cornerbacks. I understand that there's many more holes, but to have all this money and draft capital pieces, if Spytek is as good as we think he is, this should not be too much of a problem. Hopefully the Raiders don't mess it up. Go Raiders and keep doing what you do, Q. That's Dan in the 801. That's got to be the recipe. Get your head coach, right? Go and go into free agency. Fill the holes that you need to fill, the ones that you can in free agency, and it's got to be starting with the offensive line. There's no doubt about that. Go into the draft and get who you need to draft. They have 10 draft picks right now. Obviously, the first one will go to the quarterback, in my opinion, and then go from there. Right? I mean, this thing, again, this has a chance to get started on the right foot. Again, I don't think this is going to be a one-year turnaround. All of a sudden, you're going to see them like the Bears and, going into, deep into the playoffs, or the Patriots going to the championship game, or even a team like the Jaguars that won their division. Like, I don't see it being that in year one, especially with the division that the Raiders are playing in. But you can start to see the foundation built. That is for sure. Thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from LJ Raider out of Canada. He's calling to talk offensive coach, defensive coach, and has some numbers that he'd like to share with us. Here's LJ Raider out of Canada.
Hey, Q. It's LJ Raider. Every time I call, I guess you don't really hear my name. But it's like LJ Raider, like Blue Jay from Canada. Got some stats for you. I'll get right to it. Everybody's talking about, do we go with the defensive coach or do we go with the offensive coach? Here's some stats. On the NFC side, 10 of the coaches on the NFC are offensive head coaches. 8 of those 10 called their own plays. 5 offensive coordinators were fired this round, and 4 of those came from defensive head coach teams. Got the Eagles, Redskins. Who else we got here? The Bucks and the Cards. The only outlier there was the Lions. Going to the AFC side, 9 of the coaches were offensive-minded head coaches. 8 of those 9 called their own plays. And, 2 of them made the playoffs. And on the NFC side, I think 5 of them made the playoffs. So 2 offensive coordinators were fired, one from a defensive team, the Raiders, and one from an offensive team. That was the Chargers. But here's where, you can see where I'm going here. I want a head coach that can call their own plays. And in terms of a quarterback, the other thing that I guess we all argue about is, who you pick first. And I'm pretty sure everybody believes it's Mendoza. That's the guy. But here's the reason why you have to pick a quarterback in the first round. On the NFC side, 5 out of the 7 quarterbacks that are in the playoffs were drafted in the first round. 1, Hurts, was drafted in the second round, and only Purdy is the outlier who's in the 7th round. On the AFC side, all 7 quarterbacks are drafted in the first round. All 7. I don't care what anybody tells me. You want to build a team, you've got to build it with a quarterback and then build out everything else afterwards. You can always do that. I think that's where you're going with this Q. But that's the proof right there, folks. All right, anyways, take care, man. Love the show. Love what you do. Win, lose, or die, Raiders.
LJ, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, a coach that can call their own plays is good. Especially if you bring in a really strong defensive coordinator, right? That goes back to the theory of if you have a hotshot offensive coordinator and say you have a defensive-minded head coach, and then all of a sudden that hotshot OC leaves for another job, then what do you have, right? That's why I was kind of looking at even the Rams, model, and I was talking about Mike LaFleur and Nathan Schillhouse. Maybe those two could come over, one be the head coach, one be the OC, so they'll still have the same kind of style of offense, that they're working with. So there's something there, but you do want to have that consistent play caller, especially for your young quarterback. If you had a veteran quarterback, that'd be another thing. But a young quarterback just getting his feet wet in the National Football League, you don't want to have that much change, that much turnover. So you want to be able to have that guy there consistently, that's for sure. So it does feel like that's a no-brainer. We'll see how it all plays out. But it's definitely going to be intriguing. And that's why the interview today with Mike McDaniel, former Dolphins head coach, is interesting as well, in person. And could they potentially tap him to be the head coach? If so, then he's the play caller. He's the head coach. What kind of staff is he going to put together? That, to me, would be most intriguing when it comes to Coach McDaniel. But thanks so much for the call. Definitely appreciate you. Got a text from Ohio Raider from the 419. Q, just want to say thanks for all that you do for the nation. Thanks for the breakdown on all these coaches that we're interviewing. It is helpful. We hear about all these young coaches that have great minds and they become a great head coach someday. We hear about the coaches who have been fired and they're in line for another job. Like most fans, we know little about these coaches and we jump on their wagon and say we should hire them. I just appreciate the breakdown. I'll wait to see who we hire. But like most Raider fans, I just wanted to get it right. One last thing, go Canes. I'll cheer for our future quarterback starting Tuesday, but for today, it's all about the U, baby. Ohio Raider from the 419. There you go. That's getting that swagger back of the U, right? I'm not mad at that at all. And, yeah, I want to try to give you as much, breakdown and background on these coaches as possible, these potential coaches, just so you kind of have a little bit of an idea what these guys bring to the table. I don't expect everyone to understand who every assistant coach is and every OC and where they come from and how long they've been coaching. So if we can bring that to the table, I definitely try to do that as much as possible. So thanks so much for the text. Definitely appreciate you. Enjoy the game tonight, my man. We'll close things out with a call from Tuck Rule Fool. He's calling to talk about the strength of schedule and how it favored the Raiders and wants to give a thanks to the Kansas City Chiefs. Here's Tuck Rule Fool.
Hey, Q. Tuck Rule Fool again. Usually coming at you from Colorado, but I'm calling you from Florida now. So anyway, listen, I thought about something. You were saying how this is our one opportunity. I agree. This is our chance to get a quarterback, and we haven't had that chance since Jamarcus Russell flopped, which obviously didn't go well in 2007. But this time's going to be different, or it has to be different. I hope it's different. But here's a comment. We always lose these dumb tiebreakers, and I think we owe the Chiefs a bouquet or a Valentine's chocolate delivery or something like that, because the Chiefs sucked this year, and our strength of schedule, strength of schedule, SOS, which is the tiebreaker, as you know, for the draft, was in our favor. We had other teams at 3 wins, and we won it, and it's pretty much the Chiefs. The Chiefs usually win, 13 wins? Would they win 6 this year? And then it's counted twice because we played them twice. So without the Chiefs, we do not get Mendoza. So Raider Nation needs to give a gigantic hug to Patrick Mahomes and to Reed and everyone else over there, because without them, we don't get this. And I really want Chief Nation, or whatever the hell they call themselves, to hear that and really be sickened by it, especially when we kick their ass next year with the new quarterback. All right, Tuck Rule Full out.
Tuck Rule, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, I don't know how many Raider fans are going to be thanking Kansas City, right? I understand what you're saying, though. And the strength of schedule obviously played a factor in the reason that the Raiders ended up with the number 1 overall pick, because, look, there's 4 teams that ended up with the 3-14 schedule now, or record. Now, unfortunately for the Raiders, they, didn't end up with the worst record mathematically, right? I mean, even though we were all happy that they beat the Chiefs on week 18 with game 17, if they had lost that, then they would have had the number 1 overall pick in every round. Instead, they have the number 1 overall pick in the first round, and then it rotates with all the other teams that ended up 3 and 14. But the number 1 overall pick's the most important one, so I don't want to be greedy. So, again, you could thank, Kansas City, maybe just give them a tip of the cap, but I don't think Raider Nation is going to go out of their way to celebrate anyone in Chiefs Kingdom. So thanks so much for that call. Do appreciate you. And I guess I got cut time for one more text. This is from Raider Dog. It says, Q and Chicano Kennedy, how likely is a scenario where the Raiders hire Mike LaFleur knowing he's bringing Shieldhouse with him as his OC and Aubrey Pleasant as DC? Although Pleasant could have a handshake deal with Shula to be his DC if hired as head coach, or McVay if Shula leaves. So maybe Raheem Morris. Anyways, to me, this seems like a smart Spy Brady type hire. Bet on the people in the process of building this team the right way, and we're back on top. If either coordinator leaves to be a head coach, the Raiders receive draft compensation, 2 third-rounders via the 2020 resolution JC2A. We know Spy loves him some draft picks. Raider Dog out. I think all that's a possibility. I really do. That's why I mentioned before about LaFleur and Shieldhouse being a combo package. I could definitely see that. Pleasant could come in as a DC. That would be, interesting as well. And obviously they all know each other. Raheem Morris, they all know each other as well. So there's multiple different options that they have there. But again, the biggest thing is having the right decisions made by the right people. Spytek and Brady have to make the right decisions. They have to make the right hires. They have to make the right signings when it comes to free agency. In the draft, they have to make the right selections. Nobody's going to be 100%, but they've got to be really good. This has got to be one of those off seasons where they say, man, the Raiders had a great offseason. Now they got to translate it into the regular season, but they've got to have a great offseason. They do. They have the opportunity. They have all the tools in place to do that. Now they got to go out there and execute. And we all know it, execution, a lot of times ideas are great. It's the execution that gets flawed. So thanks so much for the text. Do appreciate you. That's going to do it for today's show. We were going to have the Raiders Squad show this morning, 7:30 to 8:30, but we're going to push that back till tomorrow. We're going to wait till the national championship game is over, so we'll be able to react to what we saw from the national championship game, Fernando Mendoza. So we'll have the Raiders Squad show on Tuesday with Chantel Chan, Lincoln Kennedy, and myself. But we'll be back tomorrow, of course, on the Locked On Raiders podcast, giving you more news and notes. We'll be talking about the national championship game as well, and, of course, your calls and texts, as we always do. So until then, Raider Nation, enjoy the day. You might have it off. MLK Day being celebrated, so if you are off, I'm off on my local radio show, Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920. I do have to do game night on ESPN Radio following the national championship game. But if you're off, if you're celebrating, that's awesome. Have a little bit of R&R. Have a great day off, but we'll be back here tomorrow on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So until then, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.